Good morning and welcome to our latest edition of the Existential Ambiguity podcast. You're probably wondering, what is an existential ambiguity anyway?
I'm wondering.
You are an existential ambiguity.
I am?
You. We all are.
We all are.
Yeah. Because we think we have a self.
But we can't find it anywhere.
If we go in search of it, it kind of slips away. You can't really pin it down. And this has vexed philosophers down through the ages.
Turn some of them crazy also.
Well, yeah, because you're searching for something that doesn't exist. You know, it's like the snipe hunt.
But it feels like it's there.
Were you ever in the Boy Scouts and they had a snipe hunt?
No.
No, but the snipe, of course, doesn't exist. So you go out in the middle of the night with a flashlight, and you go, here snipe, and then the other boys, of course, are hiding in the woods, and they make all these threatening noises. Rawr, you know? It's a game that Cub Scouts play.
Okay.
And the idea is, why that's similar is, we go looking for the self, and there are all these things that masquerade as the self. But as soon as we look into them, we find out they're actually not the self.
Stuff in our experience
looks
like it belongs to a self.
Yeah. And of course, you know, the most famous definition of the self was given by Descartes. I think, therefore I am.
Which one of your thoughts are you, Descartes?
Yeah, right. What exactly is thinking? So we're going to get into all these questions. We're going to get deeply into the structure of the so-called self and how it's made. And it begins from the subject that we're covering right now, which is the root structure of the Puthujjana's attention, awareness, or experience.
How most people experience stuff.
Yeah, people who don't have access to a complete or accurate copy of the Buddha's teaching. So in other words, this is called an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person. That's what Puthujjana means, an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person. Just an ordinary average guy.
Including most Buddhists.
Unfortunately, yeah. Most people who identify as Buddhists are not operating from a complete, undistorted copy of the Buddha's teaching.
I am proud to be Buddhist.
Oh, Buddha bless you, my son. We run into so many things like that, where people are actually, they're so off, they're so wrong. It's like hard to imagine where to begin to get them back on track of the Buddha's teaching, because the Buddha's teaching is about emptiness. It's about the lack of a self. It's about the unreality of our ordinary identity. So, where do you start to get these people back on track? Well, you start right where we are, with the root structure of experience. Okay? You have to go through this. It might seem like a boring slog, but it's just like if you want to study chemistry, you have to know what the elements are.
You can't just try.
No, you can't just start. You can't go in the lab and just start mixing stuff together. You're liable to blow the place up. So many philosophers have tried to identify what is this self.
They all assume a self.
They assume a self, and then they go in search of it. It's a snipe hunt. Come on, let's go hunt some snipes. But the snipe doesn't exist. It's a joke, you see. But most people have a hard time seeing the humor in it, because we are very attached to ourself. We're very attached to our identity.
And we suffer because of it.
Well, we suffer only because of it. That is the cause of suffering. To suffer, there has to be someone who suffers.
Yes.
To get karma, there has to be somebody that karma is addressed to. Somebody who's responsible for it. Somebody who owns it. You see? And of course, ownership, as we will see, appropriation, or making the one's experience to be in subjection to oneself, is the cause of karma. And because of that karma being generated, then we have to suffer.
You want stuff and you don't want other stuff.
Yeah.
And the I arises from wanting or not wanting stuff.
Yeah, we'll see how that happens, well, in just a few minutes when we go through these stages. Now, last time we discussed the 6 stages given by the Buddha in one of the suttas. Let's see.
Might as well go through them again.
Yeah, we might as well. In the Mula Pariyaya Sutta. Mula Pariyaya means root structure. Okay. So the Buddha says, "Hear, monks, the uninstructed Puthujjana, unseeing of the noble ones, ignorant of the noble teaching, unseeing of the good men, ignorant of the good men's teaching, perceives earth, solidity, as earth. Perceiving earth as earth, he conceives earth. He conceives in earth. He conceives from earth. He conceives earth is for me. He delights in earth. Why is that? Because he has not comprehended it, I tell you." So this is the Buddha's statement.
And if people want, they can look up the earth element on the internet.
Well, any element.
He
goes through, in the Mula Pariyaya Sutta, he goes through all the elements.
Yeah.
And of course, he's not breaking it down as fine as, let's say, chemistry does. But he's breaking down the elements or the substance of existence into things that behave generally the same.
5 modes of behavior.
Yes. Yes. And so most things behave either like earth, like water, like fire, like air, or like space, or like ideas, concepts, and like that. So with just a few categories of behaviors, you can make enough distinction between the different types of elements that you can recognize them when you perceive them.
And even though chemistry is maybe more accurate in one way, this way of dividing it into 4 or 5 different elements still has some value, because we see these characteristics in the world.
Well, yeah, and that's enough knowledge to attain the cessation of suffering. We don't need to know all 100 and however many elements the scientists are talking about to attain the cessation of suffering. We only need to know a handful.
Same with the mind. We don't need to know the Abhidhamma to end suffering.
That's right. Buddhist psychology.
They divide into hundreds of different
Hundreds
elements.
of different types of thinking and illusion and stuff.
You don't need it.
No. It's just like you don't need to know the whole DMCA to know that somebody's nuts.
DMCA?
Yeah, the mental health category of different types of nuttiness.
Taxonomy of craziness.
Yes, right. That's what they use to diagnose people in mental hospitals and like that. And you don't need to know that whole thing to know that somebody you see is crazy, right? So similarly, you don't need to know all the details of the chemical elements and stuff to know that, well, here's earth, here's fire, here's air, here's water, here's space, here's an idea.
You just need to know about what you encounter in your experience.
Right. Because the first stage, you could call it stage 0, is that you experience something. Let's call it X. You experience X. You have a perception of it. You contact it with your senses.
Isn't that number 1?
No, that's 0. In stage 1...
Stage 0 is consciousness.
No.
Contact?
Perception, contact, phassa.
Phassa.
You contact something with the senses.
Yeah.
There's a perception. There's an experience of a perception. Now in stage 1, you recognize that perception. It says the Puthujjana perceives X as X.
Like labeling it.
Recognizing it.
Yeah.
What does the word as mean here? Huh? I'll skip all the definitions that don't fit and go right to the one that does. It's a preposition used to refer to the function or character that someone or something has. The example is, he got a job as a cook. Okay? So now I perceive this experience that I'm having as, let's say, earth. We're using the example because that's the first example Buddha gives in the Mula Pariyaya Sutta.
Like a chair would be earth.
A chair is earth. The floor, the wall, a door.
Solidity.
Basically acts as earth. It's solid. It resists when you push against it.
Yeah.
Okay? So the first stage of, now we're talking about the reflexive experience. When the Puthujjana perceives something, that's called the immediate experience. It's simply a sensory experience. But then he begins to process that experience, and the first step of that is recognizing that this is earth, or whatever it is. He perceives X as X.
He perceives the chair as chair, or he perceives earth as earth. It would
Right.
be 2 different ways of saying the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Some category, whatever your ontological category for your perception happens to be. We're not so concerned with which category exactly, but the point is that he identifies or recognizes the thing as belonging to some category that's already in his mind. Okay? So then, let's go on to what Weti Muni says about that. Stage 1, he perceives X as X, indicates the mere awareness of the perception, where the perception is recognized as the perception of X and nothing else. It's a chair. It's not a door. It's not a bed. It's not the wall. It's not the floor. It's a chair. Okay? He perceives X as X. For example, he perceives green as green. Green is a conceptual category already existing in the mind from past experience. And then when he sees something that's green, he recognizes that's green. That's all.
But he needed the ontological category green to be able to make that
We're not going to get into that because we're talking about experience now. We're not talking about labels or categories or ontologies. Okay? That's something else.
Yeah.
We're actually trying to build up an ontology of experience. Okay, not an ontology of perception. That's why we don't care how many elements there are, how many colors there are, or how many categories there are in your ontology. Just the fact that you are using an ontology. There's some background knowledge, some model of the way things are.
Everyone knows green.
Yeah, everybody has some name for green. Verde in French, or whatever, you know. So they have a label, or they have a category to recognize the thing. Now, once you recognize this is the thing that I'm experiencing, the other stages, stage 2 through 5, depict the basic structure of the phenomenon of appropriation. Appropriation. So let's look that up.
I'm just making an educated guess here.
That sounds good. Appropriation, noun. The action of taking something for one's own use, typically without the owner's permission.
Yeah, there is no owner, so you can't get the permission.
But the thing is, you're acting independently. You're acting independently to appropriate something. The perception of being in subjection. You're experiencing something. That something is a being. And then you appropriate that thing. Yeah. You make it yours.
The thing in your experience, you make it yours.
You make it yours, and then you make an I from it. That's what we're going to discuss here. The perception of being in subjection. Okay, this is mine. This phenomenon best characterizes the Puthujjana's reflexive experience. The most fundamental nature of the Puthujjana's reflexive experience is one of appropriation, of immediate experience being appropriated or brought into subjection. You know, I'm going to make you mine. It's gross when you think about it that way, isn't it? The stages 2 through 5 above are 4 levels of explicitness in the basic structure of appropriation.
Explicitness. More and more detail?
No, more and more obvious.
More and more obvious.
Explicit means totally obvious. No discretion, no politeness about it. It's right out in the open. Everybody can see. This is it.
It is what it is.
So, the 4 stages, 2 through 5, are perceiving X as X. He conceives X. 3 is he conceives in X. 4 is he conceives from X. And 5 is he conceives X is for me. It's mine. It's mine, baby.
Not yours, mine.
So, those are 4 stages of increasing explicitness, of appropriation, or subjugating the being of the thing experienced.
Something becomes more and more obvious.
Yes, what becomes more and more obvious is that this is mine. Okay? In the beginning, well, we're going to go through these stages in detail a little bit later on. What he's trying to do now is show the whole stage, the whole sequence. And what he's saying, I'm sorry, I used the wrong word. These levels do not signify a sequence where one arises after the previous one has ceased. They describe a single but graded structure in the present.
The whole thing arises
simultaneously.
Co-arises.
Yeah, the whole thing arises simultaneously. It's a gradient. But
so you can be on different levels. You can be on different
levels, yeah. But the level 2 is much more implicit. It's much more tacit, not expressed, silent. What we just know is that we walk out on the hill and we see the landscape spread below, and we know deep in our hearts, this is mine. It's the essence of egotism, isn't it? To appropriate something. The person who walks in the room and looks at all the women like they're there, like they're his, Isn't that like just the essence of egotism? So the stages 2 through 5 are 4 levels of explicitness in this basic structure of appropriation. Some of these levels, being very implicit, are difficult to see in experience. However, we can always make an attempt. He's being a little understated there. If we observe our experience very closely, we can identify all these layers.
Especially with practice.
Oh yeah, it takes practice. Now this is where we come to the experiential part. This is where we make the difference between what we're doing and ordinary book learning. In ordinary book learning, they would just say, okay, here's these 6 stages. Now,
memorize them.
Yeah, and there'll
answer the test.
And there'll be a test tomorrow. But we're saying, okay, now you know these stages. So the next time you sit down
Or
have a moment to yourself, look for them. Look for them. They're going on constantly, automatically. It's on automatic pilot.
Yes.
This is something we learned to do when we were very, very young, in our mother's arms, literally. And now it's going on by automatic pilot.
Yes.
So it's there. The Buddha, when he looked within himself, he saw all these things. He noticed all these things, and he's explaining them in the suttas.
Yeah.
This leads somewhere. Okay? We're doing it. For example, we used the example yesterday, if somebody has a disease, the doctor is going to explain to them the nature of the disease and then how to cure it. In other words, before he does any kind of treatment, he's going to explain to the patient, well, this is what's going on, this is what we have to do, and get their permission.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're doing something similar here. The Buddha has looked within himself. He's seen the nature of the disease in himself.
Yeah. First he had the inner dynamics of a Puthujjana.
Right. Everybody starts out as a Puthujjana, including those people who may have been meditating for many years. Okay? Because they're not operating from a complete, detailed version of the Buddha's teaching. They've managed to summarize it for themselves, or put it in some kind of a view that allows them to deal with it superficially. So we should be able to see all these things within ourselves if we look for them. And I mean, I don't have any trouble seeing them.
No.
In fact, I see them too much. So you should be able to observe yourself and see all these things, because for sure you have this disease.
Everyone does.
Unless you're enlightened, unless you're a Buddha already, and then why are you listening to us? So you should be able to see these things in yourself and be able to track our progress as we go through these concepts in your own work of self-observation. That's what this is all about.
Should go on continuously during the day. I forget it on and off, so I'll do it for an hour or two, and then I'll not do it, and then I'll catch myself being in my senses and in my mind.
Yeah.
And then I'll pull back and continue the observation.
Well, we all do that.
Yeah. I feel so much better when I do this process.
Because why? It keeps everything above board. Keeps it all honest. I mean, okay, if we're appropriating our experience and we're making ego and all that, at least let's be honest about it to ourselves and to others.
Yeah.
So, in stage 2, perceiving X as X, he conceives X. The appropriation is so subtle that it is barely implied by the verb conceives, manyati.
Gets the idea?
Yes. Yeah. The conceiving, manyana, refers to conceiving subjectivity.
He gets the first small little idea of a self.
Right. Because if there's an object, there also must be a subject.
Yeah.
Right? The duality, the fundamental duality, is the subject-object duality, the perceiver and the perceived. And the perception is the relationship between them. So you have an ontological triple. Okay? Look up ontological triple. I'm not going to explain it now. But whenever you have a duality, you actually have a trinity. Because you have one thing, the other thing, and the relation between them.
Yes.
So, the appropriation is so subtle that it is barely implied by the verb conceives, manyati. The conceiving, manyana, refers to conceiving subjectivity. And perceiving X as X, he conceives X, indicates that when the Puthujjana has perceived X as X, he is pregnant with the possibility of bringing X, the object disclosed in immediate experience, into subjection, appropriating it.
Making it his.
Yes. In other words, it's just like the light goes on in his head. Hey, I could make that mine. Wow, what a concept.
But actually he's disconnecting himself from the root experience.
That's right. And you see, this is why egotism is always unsatisfactory. It's always unsatisfactory because even though the root experience or the immediate experience is perfect, it's complete in itself.
In its totality.
We separate ourselves from it in order to divide it into an object and a subject so that we can declare it mine.
And then we get focused on subject, object, and we miss everything else in our experience.
Exactly. Very good. So at this stage, on stage 2, it's still just a possibility.
Like a seed.
Yes. More precisely, it means that when he has become aware that he is perceiving X, he is also pregnant with the conceit, mana, I. And mana is a very interesting word because mana, like most words in Pāli, comes from Sanskrit. And in Sanskrit, mana is a kind of loving anger.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I thought it was mind.
In Rasa Tattva, no.
Mana is loving anger.
Yes. Yeah, it's a specific mood where a person who is under subjection of someone else, a lover, tries to turn the tables and become the one who's in control through anger. Okay?
Loving anger.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting word, mana.
Sounds like the Buddhist way of dealing with objects, either pulling them in with greed or pushing them away with anger.
Right. And because of that, he is also pregnant with the relationship that X, the object disclosed by immediate experience, is that which I is concerned about. I'm concerned about it. It's more than just having my attention on it. It matters to me. I'm concerned with it.
Starting to see the platform for suffering here.
Well, yeah, it's by bringing things into subjection. That's how you generate karma. Okay, because it's not yours.
No.
There is no you for it to be yours of.
And even if you can cling to it and enjoy it for a little while, it's going to change, or you're going to lose it, or whatever.
Right.
Or it's unsatisfactory. You want more of it.
Well, what is the object that we're so concerned about? He says the object disclosed in the immediate experience is also referred to as name and form, to be discussed later when we get to discussing Paticca-samuppada.
Wonderful.
Dependent origination. So the thing that we're experiencing is name and form. Not exactly the object itself, but the object plus a name or a description, a meaning. Significance has entered into the picture. And part of that significance is, oh, I could make this mine.
I could enjoy this.
I could enjoy it, exactly. Right. The word mana, translated conceit, indicates a combination of concept and pride. People are, they get a new car or something and they're proud of it. They get some new clothes and then they strut around like roosters. All puffed up with pride. So this pride is part of this mood, mana. This haughty anger that comes from wanting to make something mine. It's a conceit. The conceit of I.
And now we're encountering MUs here.
What?
Conceit is an idea that is false. Is it?
Let's look it up. Conceit. What does Mr. Oxford have to say? Excessive pride in oneself. He was puffed up with conceit. And the other definition is a fanciful expression in writing or speech, an elaborate metaphor.
I think the next one is the best one.
What's that?
A fanciful notion.
A fanciful notion, exactly. Exactly. It's something you make up.
Yeah.
It's a fabrication.
You're trained to do it, but...
Well, just because we're trained doesn't make it any less of a fabrication.
No.
It still
affects us.
It's still a lie.
Yeah.
Any way you slice it. There is no such thing as I. There is no such thing as a self. We bring it into being by this very process that we're discussing.
Yeah.
This is the process of I-making and mind-making. Okay? And this is why it's really hard for most people to get through it.
Yeah. And this is the thing that makes most Buddhists Puthujjanas. Because they don't want to deal with I-making or mind-making.
Right. They want to go to the temple and make some offerings and get some good karma for I and mine.
But the business of the illusion of I and mine is the core of the Buddha's teaching.
Yes, and yet most Buddhists don't ever even attempt to go into it.
No.
It's sad. See, we're starting from the other side. We're starting from the illusion of I and mine, and then going on to address other things and put them in the proper perspective.
Yeah.
So this is real Buddhism, folks. So the Pāli word mana, translated conceit, indicates a combination of concept, this fanciful notion, and pride. It is not so subtle as the ordinary meaning of concept, yet not so coarse as pride. It is something of both. It's a conceit.
Yeah.
Yeah. The great me.
Fill in the blank.
Yeah, whatever.
Everyone has a story that they make up.
Yes, they make up about I, concerning I. And the story begins with a perception, a raw experience, immediate experience.
That's either pleasurable or painful.
No, we haven't got there yet. We're not at feeling yet. We're still at phassa. We're still directly at contact. At the moment of contact, the name and form of the object is then...
the name and form.
The name and form of the object contacted. The object disclosed in the immediate experience and recognized according to its name and form, which exists previously in one's ontology, but that's not really important here.
No.
The important thing is that it's recognized and then it's made mine. And this is how we generate the story. We start with an object that we perceive directly, and then we start to tell this story about it. That this thing, let's say I'm looking at this microphone, and then I have the possibility, I see the possibility to make it mine. And how do I make it mine? I start to make up a story. Well, I'm concerned about this microphone. This microphone matters to me.
Because I am a speaker.
I am being recorded by it.
Makes you very important.
That's pride. See, this pride is an element in the conceit of I, and also the fanciful notion, the fabrication. We're making this I out of nothing. We're spinning it. We're spinning a yarn about it. Coming up with a fish tail.
We're closing off everything in our experience except the object, and we're making up a story.
That's right. It's art. Art in the sense of artificial.
Small a.
Yeah, we're creating something that doesn't really exist, an illusion, a piece of artwork about this person called I, and how this object that I'm encountering in my experience is mine.
See it going on all the time.
Yes, it's going on everywhere.
High school games.
It's going on everywhere.
Who can make the nicest eye and impress all the other eyes.
Yes. Now in stage 3, he conceives in X. X gets endowed with the conceit I. With this endowment, I is no longer a mere concept. It is a concept with a referent. That is, I is not just an idea or an abstract concept. It is a concept that refers to something concrete. And then that concrete referent is I. So we identify, we project the idea of I into the object that we're perceiving.
Yeah, we label the object with for I.
Not yet.
Related to I.
Not yet. No.
Pertaining to I.
No.
No.
No. It's endowed with the conceit.
With the conceit.
I. The object is. There is no separate I yet.
Okay.
Okay? The object itself is recognized as I. Okay? First of all, we recognized Earth as Earth. We recognize the object as the thing that it is. Huh? Then we become aware in stage 2 that, oh, I could do something with this. Okay? I can spin a yarn about it. I can tell a story. I can make up a concept. I this. Okay? So let's say it's a microphone. Okay? So in the beginning it's just a microphone. But then we make it I microphone. And then later on, we're running out of time, so I can't go on at this level of detail. But to finish the whole thing, we separate the I from the thing. And this is where we see, like, people with the new car, people with the new clothes, identifying the thing as self. Huh? Somebody gets into a car accident and they say, "You hit me." No, you hit your car, stupid. But because the person is identified with the car, they say, "You hit me." And they feel like you hit them. They take it like that.
Yeah.
They take it like an ego thing. Because that is how ego is created. One identifies with an object, puts one's concept of self into the object.
The object is a part of yourself, yeah.
No, the object is yourself. There is no separate self at this stage.
Yeah.
We're only in stage 3.
And there's only one experience at a time.
Right. In stage 4, you start to separate the sense of self from the object. It's that he conceives from X. Right now, stage 3 is he conceives in X. Well, what does he conceive? I. In X. Then in the next stage, he conceives from X. He conceives his I from the viewpoint of the object, from the experience itself. Out of the experience, he fashions an ego. And then the next and final stage is X is for me. Huh? X is for I. First it's just X. And then X as X. Okay? And then conceiving in X. Conceiving I. In X, and then conceiving I from X, separating them. And then, and only then, he can say, X is for I, X is for me.
And then he delights in X.
Ah, yes, then we delight. I'm doing the villain mustache twirl finger thing here. So anyway, it is villainous. It is, because it's fundamentally a deception.
Yeah.
And first of all, we deceive ourselves. And then we go on to deceive others. This is mine. You'll keep your dirty hands off. So the whole idea of egotism is born from this process, this 6-stage process. This is how the I is made. And if we look into ourselves, we can see it going on at every moment. And we should. Because by not trying to stop it, but by simply bringing awareness into the process.
Observing your behavior in real time.
Yes, it'll stop by itself. How can it go on? Because this is fundamentally ignorance. This is how ignorance works. By identifying I, things that are not I. By identifying mine, things that are not mine. There is no I in the first place, so how can it be mine?
Can't.
See, this is where all the existentialist philosophers get tripped up. They also accept the assumption that I exists, that a self exists, and then they try to analyze things because of it, like Heidegger with his extensive analysis of to hand and in hand and whatever, at hand, yeah, because he thinks the I is real, therefore can possess things, because that is how I is defined, by what it possesses.
Yeah.
This is my body, this is my self, my ego,
my qualities,
my mind, yeah, my experience, so on. But if there really is no I, that kind of blows up the whole analysis, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the existentialists got themselves into trouble by asking this question, what am I? See?
Yeah.
Which the scientists try to evade the question. They say, well, there is no self, there's only physical reality, and it's totally objective, and that's it. But they behave as someone with a subject, I. So they're fundamentally hypocritical.
Irrational.
Yes, but the existentialists were attempting to be rational. And what they found is, of course, that the question is unanswerable. It leads to a fundamental ambiguity.
As long as you assume a self.
Right, because the thing that you assume seems to exist, but as soon as you really look into it, you find it doesn't really exist.
Can't find it anywhere.
No, where is it? Just like Bodhidharma and the king. Show me your mind. I'll take care of it. And he looked for his mind. He was sitting there sweating. Up in the mountains at 4 o'clock in the morning, sweating, looking for his mind. He couldn't find it. So, if you take this process not as an intellectual exercise or knowledge, quote unquote, but as an experience, and you make it yours by looking into it for yourself,
methodology,
then yes, that's the phenomenological methodology. You'll really get something out of it. You'll walk away from this with something really valuable.
Only benefits.
Yeah. No downside to it. No, not at all. Okay, so we'll continue next time with going through these stages again from a different point of view and trying to make the idea more clear.